Hey folks, welcome to another Masculinity Monday. Going to continue on with David and Saul. If you missed last week's, be sure to catch it there on the Focus Press YouTube channel. As we talked about the introductions of David and Saul, and you had David as a very detail-oriented, conscientious, competent young man, and Saul who was not, somebody who really wasn't taking care of business. But this week I want to look at another side of that really demonstrates two different ways of being a man, two different ways of leading, two different ways of just doing things that Saul and David had. And I want to look first in 1 Samuel 15 where Saul, I should say, lost Samuel's confidence, lost God's protection with him. Samuel was told by God, go down. Saul didn't do his job. He was fighting off the Amalekites, and this was a generations-long issue that God had wanted the Amalekites destroyed. Saul had the opportunity, and he didn't do it. He held back some of the animals. He held back King Agag of the Amalekites, didn't do what he was called to do. And yet, when Samuel comes to him here in 1 Samuel 15, verse 13, Saul said to him, "Blessed are you of the Lord. I have carried out the command of the Lord." Samuel knows that that's not true. He says, "What then is this bleating of the sheep in my ears, and the lowing of the oxen which I hear?" Saul said, "They have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God, but the rest we have utterly destroyed." Notice the change there mid-sentence. They did this, the people did that, but we utterly destroyed. The part that you wanted done, yeah, I was part of that. The part that we weren't supposed to do, that was all them. That was the people. Well, the fact of the matter is, Saul was king. The buck should have stopped with him. If the people weren't going to sacrifice everything, if they weren't, destroy everything, if they weren't going to do what they were commanded, it was up to Saul to say, guys, this is what God told us to do, and we're going to do it. And in so many cases like this, things that might not be your fault still are your responsibility. And as the king, that was the issue with Saul, is he could point the blame all day long, but he's the one that paid for it. He's the one that loses his kingdom. He's the one that gets this rebuke from Samuel over it, that God was not pleased with Saul's actions, and yet he turns and starts pointing fingers. You see this all the way back in the garden with Adam. He first points at God and at his wife Eve, says, "The woman that you gave me, Lord, she gave me this fruit to eat." And so, pointing the blame, pointing the fingers. Eve turns and says, "Well, the serpent," and you just keep pointing fingers all the way down the line. Same happens with Aaron and the issue of the golden calf. Moses comes down the mountain and is furious at what's going on, and Aaron's explanation is, well, these people, the people wanted it. And again, it's like, you're the leader. It doesn't matter if the people wanted it. It's your job to say no, and they can handle the fallout. They can deal with it, and whatever happens from there, but you're supposed to hold up your end of the bargain here. Saul is this example of somebody not owning it, not stepping up and taking the responsibility. On the other hand, when you look to David, after the sin with Bathsheba, after everything that went wrong there, and the snowball of sins that David kept adding on to, and Nathan the prophet confronts David about it and says, "You are the man. You're who I'm talking about. You're the one who sinned in this way." David just says one sentence, short as can be. Then David said to Nathan, "I have sinned against the Lord." He did not say, well, Bathsheba. He did not say, well, Uriah. He didn't say any of the directions he could have pointed fingers. He said, yeah, I sinned. That was wrong. He owned it. For men, for leaders, for this is the same as last week. Yeah, women need to have personal responsibility too, and this is a lesson that can be from both men and women, but the masculinity part of it is, if you are going to lead, if you're going to lead in the home as a husband, as a father, if you're going to maybe eventually lead in the church or whatever it may be, you have to have this David mindset that says, I'm going to own it. I'm going to take the blame when I do what's wrong. I'm going to look at my own life with that ownership of my own actions and even what is under my responsibility. And faithful in little, faithful in much, as I pointed out last week, as Jesus said, the more of that kind of responsibility you take, even for others' actions that might not be your fault, but you're taking the responsibility to fix them, to clean up the mess, and to make a difference, the more people see that, the more it stands out, the more people trust you because they know you're not going to throw them under the bus. I mean, imagine what it did to Saul's relationship with the people to behave in this way. They know you're going to throw them under the bus. Well, the same happens in a marriage. If the husband's going to point to the wife and then she's going to point at him, and they're not going to be on the same page, and it's going to lead to a very miserable marriage. And if the parents to the kids, or to other family members, or to friends, or to church people, and you're always just pointing blame back and forth, somebody's got to step up and say, we're going to fix this, and I'll take responsibility, even if it wasn't entirely my fault, even if I'm not the only one involved in the situation. I'm going to try and make it better. Even if you're a young guy and you don't have a family yet, or you're somebody who wants to maybe get married someday, are you taking responsibility for what's yours? I mean, there's a million excuses to not do things. You can point at the world, you can point at the economy, you can point at, and there's reality to a lot of these things. I mean, David could have pointed at other people and say, "Hey, Bathsheba came along. She was part." He didn't do that. And Saul, there probably was some legitimacy to his blame shifting. We know Aaron, the people did want a golden calf, or they wanted an idol, and so there's a little bit of legitimacy there. But it doesn't matter when the buck stops with you, when you're owning it, when you're taking that responsibility. And that starts small. That starts with the things that are in your realm of control, the things that are under your responsibility today. Just the little things of the job that you have, your own personal space. If you're somebody, a young guy who still lives at home, keeping your room clean. Take responsibility for your own things. And the more responsibility you take in the little things, the more you get in the bigger ones. And anytime you do something wrong, don't turn and point fingers. Don't figure out who else's fault, what percentage of the blame goes where. Own it. Step up and own it. That's how you get people's respect, but it's also how you keep yourself accountable, because man, I really don't like owning it. I really don't like having to say I messed up, so you do a better job. If you always have that out of pointing to other people and trying to shift the blame, you don't have as much motivation to really give your best at all times, because you can always find an excuse. You can always put it off on somebody else. Owning it makes you a better man, makes you a better person. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about this week, is the idea of owning it, of following David's example and not Saul's. As always, these are going up every Monday here on the Focus Press YouTube channel. As always, good for the algorithm if you click like. If even better if you have a comment to leave. And be sure you're subscribed here on YouTube. And if you're not watching on YouTube, but on my site, jackwilkie.co, be sure you're subscribed there to get the emails, the latest articles, and videos that I'm posting. And as always, I tell you about the Church Reset podcast feed. If you just want to catch audio of Masculinity Monday and other videos I'm putting out, as well as the article read-throughs and the audio that goes up from those, be sure you're subscribed on your podcast app to Church Reset. And keep an eye out, because there will be more coming probably this afternoon. If not, then tomorrow. And so be sure you're subscribed. We'll talk to you later.